what do we know? We have more experience of how the research centers really deal with the IPR, with their technologies, with the property of their technology or their knowledge. When we say knowledge transfer in this respect, we are using, let's say, an exception that is adopted by the Commission that includes both the technology and the knowledge. So we are more accustomed to discuss perhaps that kind of information. However, not too long ago, research infrastructures came to the fore, and really recently, in the last 20 years, we've seen a lot of these infrastructures developing, also thanks to the input of the Commission. So these new infrastructures may have different architectures. Some of them are single-sided, some of them are distributed. And you may think this has nothing to do with what we're discussing. However, we have in fact discovered that there is quite a difference in the way these kind of information, but as well as a lot of other aspects of their management is taken. When we discuss intellectual property in distributed research infrastructure, especially if they are newly established or not so long ago established, we know that a lot of this information actually resides in the universities, in the research centers. It may not be held at the central management level. This may or may not mean, and you will tell me perhaps, that the central management offices do not really broker for this technology, or do they? Or if not, is there a way we can facilitate this? Is there a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge and technology that is sitting somewhere, even worse than it was already the case, just considering the university centers, that perhaps we can facilitate the exchange of through the RIs themselves. The research infrastructures are very powerful instruments of communication, as well as many other things, of course, to support to research. But they do have, I would say, special powers. So what are the current initiatives that we know of, and can we potentiate them? Can we make them work even better? Or what are new ideas around this concept? How can we build a better instrument or a new instrument with even better possibilities? So I would like to ask for a couple of persons to initially share their experience with us, and then allow any of you to make questions if you have, or share your experience, if you will. And then perhaps have your reflections on what are the priorities for such an instrument? What should it have? What must it have? Such an instrument in order to work and really allow a transition of information, a flow of information, and eventually lead to what we're all trying to achieve, which is an impact in society and innovation. So sorry for this long introduction. I would like to come to ask a couple of persons, I said, to join us and initially share their experiences. The first person I would like to introduce is Nigel Wagstaff. He's in EATRIS, one of the research infrastructures of the health and food domain. And he has a very long experience of being at the interface between industry and research in this domain. And he's a partner in Enrich, and he's also been leading an initiative from a previous project that involved a lot of the health and food RIs on creating an initiative that was about these kind of exchanges. And then I will ask Antonio Bonucci from Exfel to also share his experience with us, and also to introduce himself. I don't know Antonio so well, so I leave to him afterwards to just make a brief introduction about himself, and then to share with us what what he thinks are ways forward. Nigel, so you have been on this Corbel experience. Will you share with us what did you find? What did you create, and how did it work, and where is that now?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you, Ilaria. I was indeed involved in the Corbel project, which ran for 5 years and which aimed to really streamline a number of activities between 13 biomedical science RIs. So together, and they were all distributed RIs, together that was a very large number of individual institutes and a huge body of knowledge to be basically mined for the benefit of RIs, but also industry. So that was the challenge, I think. And when I started it, I came from a background of technology transfer at a university and a university medical hospital. And Ilaria already touched on this. A lot of technology and knowledge transfer takes place at the level of the individual institute. And the RIs have to really position themselves as to what their added value is. They command a far greater spectrum of resource, but they're not always directly involved in bilateral or multilateral deals with industry. So that was a little bit the background to it. What did we do in Corbel? We set up what is called an innovation help desk, which was an activity available to all the RIs, but also to industry, where we could try and matchmake. We could get inquiries in from both academia and industries. That was one of the things. The other was to really make available resources that you need if you're setting up collaborations. Think of template agreements, but also toolkits to talk you really through how you set up collaborations. And so the web portal was became populated, with a number of documents and templates of use for people, and these were downloaded. So I think if you look at the two activities, the matchmaking, if I may call it that, and the provision of guides, the latter was used quite a lot. The actual matchmaking, rather less. And I think the point there is that a web portal to try to set up tech transfer between public and private entities, is really in addition to the personal networks and other routes that should be used or are used primarily to contact industry. And I think we found this, that the main route really to setting up contacts with industry for the biomedical RIs is through personal networks. That may differ for other segments, but it's, I think, the combination of the two, and probably the web portals are useful, but as a kind of reinforcement of the rest. I can imagine that an SME, where there's been some contact, would then immediately go to look at the web portals to find out what is the nature of this entity, this RI that I'm dealing with. So there is some reinforcement there, which is very important. The activity, the Corbel project finished last year. The activity has continued. The help desk still exists within IATRIS, and there's an email link which we can provide so that requests can be made to it. So the business developers in IATRIS basically are entertaining requests for assistance with innovation, which they can then put out across the biomedical science RIs and indeed other RIs, though that has not yet happened. We're open to that. The template documents are still there, which can be used, and they have a fairly generic character. So confidentiality agreements, material and data transfer agreements, and a guide to setting up collaboration agreements. And there is also, that was a deliverable from the project, a best practices guide for industry collaboration. That's a document that's also available. It's 50 pages and it contains 100 references to where you can find information, because there are a lot of sources out there, individual tech transfer offices the European IPR help desk some sources for various agreements. So we saw it as our task to provide some kind of reference material, a kind of one-stop shop guide, so people could find what they wanted. That's all available, and we'd be very keen to continue the Corbell activity, but then across the Enrich network. So I think that's a summary of where I'm coming from.
Okay, that's fabulous. And so I'd like, before we start discussing, I would like to ask Antonio to tell us his experience. Antonio is in XFEL, which is a large facility of laser instruments. And he has set up a series of initiatives in the recent years to support the innovation and the flow of information from the research world into the business. And he's a person experienced of both worlds. So I'm very happy to have his experience brought to us. Thank you, Antonio. Please let us know what you have in mind.
Actually, yes, I'm a kind contributor manager in European XFEL. I follow half of the construction, and now I'm the contacting person for industry in European XFEL. But like you said, I worked in the past for the company in the industrial world, just from the other side, receiving technology transfer from a large institution and so on. So I live both experience. Both in kind contribution and in my activity now, that is technology transfer, industrial user, supplier of innovation procurement, I see that we make continuously technology transfer and I would say knowledge transfer in our activities, also with our supplier, in our contract with our supplier. We gave them the possibility to create free of license, of course, our system, and likely after to produce for other application. And then I would say that technology transfer, in my opinion, also with the view of the industry, it's not a real instrument of business for our research, because for me business is when the income is more than the cost, and this is not the case. On the contrary, is a very powerful instrument for collaboration. I would say that it's the main instrument for collaboration. And then when we speak about initiative to foster technology transfer, in my opinion, collaboration platforms are very important, where all the research institute, industry, they propose problem looking for other competence, or they propose their competence looking for a further application. Just to go to the question of Ilaria, our last experience was in the project Attract that we are in the organization. First of all, we make a marketplace with this kind of collaboration platform. I think it was really working well. Was focuses in 2 days of rush to take contact and study all the application. We are doing in another frame, another marketplace with the technology transfer, Big Science Business Forum. You are part of it because it will be one day only for Enrich. We make a in-person marketplace, but this will work differently from a collaboration platform. Really, anyone, not only the organizer or the RI, but also the industry, can publish now on the website their offer of technology. And after, we will look for a possible partnership in this one in person in Granada. Just to be informed, because how it works, I don't have time to explain, but the 18th of February, we will make a webinar where all the instruction will be done how to participate. If everything is already open, anyone can already participate. But why I want to show this example, because As always, I repeat, it's a collaboration. So it must, you ask something that must be bilateral. I don't believe in this kind of technology transfer, I would say MIT style, where our research facilities are really able to teach completely from zero to the end to a company how to produce system and after put on the market. In any case, you need from the company side, of course, the experience in production, industrial production, but also the information of the real application, the market, that our RI system is limited to their own application. So for me, it's important that any kind of system that you make will be in such a way bilateral, so with everyone that can participate to foster the application. The other must, I agree totally with Nigel. So any kind of a virtual platform that can foster, can be useful to spread information, must be, I use his word, reinforced or instantiated by in-person contact. I think collaboration, in particular technology transfer, need the best important aspect in collaboration, trust. And unfortunately, we are not able to create this one through our system. It's not only the idea of the technology transfer behind it is transferred or shared, but also all the knowledge around, and also how the facility is able to do it, and all the resources that has. And this, a company will check before reading any kind of patent or what else. He wants to understand, I remember very well from my company, if the patent is solid, not the patent, because usually when you develop from an intellectual property something, you need other than only the part. So I think these are the two aspects, but in any case, we will see this second experiment. You are all invited the 18th of February. I see that there is also Paolo between us. There
Yes.
will be also a stage where Paolo will be moderator of the facility, and we choose the facility not to make promotion of our technology transfer, because they will be the marketplace in Granada, but just to show different model of technology transfer. So we choose really the facility like CERN, ESA, MBL, that are very specific way to do it, to show that behind this concept of technology transfer, there are different way also to do it. Please participate. You will learn about the stage, different model, but how to enter in the system and enter also your proposal for the marketplace.
And Antonio, if I may, from our conversations the other day, I think one thing that really struck me was that you use a different terminology than what we usually typically refer to technology transfer, but you use the word exchange.
Yes.
And when you say collaboration, you mean me as a research infrastructure, I put in the technology I have, and you as an industry, you may be a user, but actually you also can put on the table what you can do, and we can exchange on different needs and build something new together practically. And this is, in your experience, what really works very well.
Yes, I would say in the experience, at least that I have, it was working this way. And also not only for technology transfer, also for the collaboration like industrial user, never there will be a real measurement that the industry comes and say, okay, I will give you the sample, please give me the data. So they will use their knowledge and technology to make the experiment possible. The same with technology transfer. You have the idea, but after to be instantiated in something real, you need the knowledge of the company. So it's exactly the technology exchange, if I would say.
Okay.
But anyway, the template that we prepare, like Nigel said before, we refer like technology transfer and license,
right.
the normal terminology.
Right. But you know, things evolve, and it's good to introduce new vocabulary if we need to make something happen, and we need to give indications on way forward. I think it's important to just use new words, new buzzwords. And I would like to know if there's anybody in the audience from the industry side, and if they could just speak. Not really.
And yeah.
Yes, hi,
Yes.
Ilaria.
Hello, I'm Roddy from
This-
Red Rose Development in Ireland.
That's correct. Yes, I'm working in the area of seaweed. And this is so incredibly timely because I am launching and working in collaboration on 2 specific projects. But as you know, Ilaria, I'm a very small company with limited funding. One of the projects could potentially be funded by an external company, but they would be looking for the full IP.
Mm.
The second project, I'm in discussion at the moment with Enterprise Ireland and NUIG with a view to spinning in and then spinning out. But on the basis that both of these projects are coming from me, my developments, I don't want to give up the family silver, but at the same time, clearly, in order to progress, it is making sure that the trade-off works on every level, from the technology transfer point of view, the how to enhance things and develop it forward. So any advice, and this, as I said, is so timely, and Nigel has very kindly shared a link where hopefully I can get access to even just look and absorb in this whole new discipline, an area where I have no experience.
Okay, unfortunately, Ireland, well, I'm sure that Ireland is, some facilities in Ireland, some centers must be connected to some of the research infrastructures. I think it could be nice to see which of those centers are in a research infrastructure and see if they could help you perhaps from that perspective, just as a service really. But it's not something I can do from just the top of my head to just search for this kind of information. But if anybody wants to react to Anne's experience, does anybody want to come in has any advice? No, really, you're on your own as usual.
Yeah, feeling
That's
like
life.
no mates.
But you can call me. We can talk later.
We will. This is so timely. Literally, the discussions are happening over the next few weeks. So,
okay, I guess here one of the points of this exchange was really to debate the creation or the refinement of portals of information, and does it make sense for the research infrastructures to have catalogs of information, and to what level should these catalogs be detailed? I said in the beginning that there is a difference in the way this information is managed by distributed research infrastructures and possibly larger, but anyways, centralized research infrastructures, which typically develop the whole thing. So they do develop proprietary technologies. And I guess the distributed infrastructures eventually will do the same, but perhaps they're just younger, and sometimes they don't do this to begin with. It's not their initial remit to create the technology. They make sure that the technology is created, but it may reside somewhere else in the university centers. I would like to ask, I guess it is in the audience, Nicholas Pade, he's the director of EMBRC, Eric. I do have familiarity with the infrastructure per se. And so I would like to ask, if you will, come to the fore, for his views on this particular point. In the experience of EMBRC, and perhaps if he can expand on broader experiences, are there, is this information somewhat managed at the central level, or do the central management offices, do they do something to broker this technology? Or is there a plan to do so? Or this is not something that is really in the business model of these research organizations?
Thanks, Ilaria. I would just want to start by saying I think you've put your fingers on a lot of important points regarding the technology, regarding the difference between the focus of distributed infrastructures and single-sided infrastructures. I would say from our experience, so just to clarify, EMBRC is the European Marine Biological Resource Center. So our infrastructure supports everything that's research and innovation around marine biological organisms and in the sea on the coast. So we are very much focused around expertise and facilities that are close to the organisms, that are close to the sea. So we are not really, at this point anyway, looking at developing specifically a new technology, a new laser or a new supercooled metal that can be used in fusion or along those directions. So very often the initial reaction is people say, okay, well, there's not a big technological scope here, so we move on. And we don't have that starting point, for example, saying, hey, we're microscopy, so we can go and work with those big manufacturers there. And I'd say that's one of the big differences already, is that whilst there isn't an immediate obvious technology input, I think it's too simple to say, no, there's nothing to do there. So one of the areas, for example, where we develop a lot and we innovate a lot is particularly around the culture of organisms. These may be small things like how do we enrich the environments in which our organisms live and the quality. It might be novel lighting systems that ensure much better quality of the aquarium tanks. And whereas these are not, you know, billion-dollar businesses, this is actually tech that is really interesting to aquaculture businesses and so on. However, being a distributed infrastructure, we have over 30 partners, many of them big universities. Very often they're not that interested in these small things. What they want is next Google, they want next laser, they want big things. So they ignore these things. So I think actually there's an opportunity for the distributed research infrastructures to pick up those maybe smaller things and say, okay, you're not that interested in it, so we will run with this. Because what they want, what I have to avoid is to put myself in competition for IP with essentially my sponsors, if you want, the institutes that I depend on. If I push myself forward on IP, they'll say, hold on, I don't want to share the money with you because I'm doing this in my laboratory. You might have enabled it. Why should I share the cake? So I first of all have to ensure that. So that also means that I have to look, where is it relevant? On big technology, where I can do something is organize everybody and say, okay, we have critical mass together. And therefore, it is interesting, for example, let's say in biological observation, there's a huge space now for developing novel sensors around biological parameters. We can bring a huge number of people, stations, test sites, and expertise in around a couple of big companies to move on developing new big technology. This is where I can play a role. But I suspect the day that I get to the IP issue, I will be, you know, have to tread very carefully with how my board is going to react to this. But to be quite honest, I do think that it's also really exciting to pick up on some of these smaller things. And, you know, so one of the things there I'm interested to do is to look at, see whether or not we can create a spin-off that where we can pick up these smaller technologies and try to market them through that. But again, this is time consuming, it costs money, I need staff for it. So this is probably the third point, and I'll end that where I agree with you, Ilaria, is that these are things that we want to do, but there's a basis of operation that we need to establish, a legitimacy that we need to establish before we can move into that. I have to be able to say, yes, we're a functioning infrastructure, we have a pedigree of delivery before I can go to a company and say, of course I can deliver that.
Okay. Okay, so it may be just a matter of time, in fact, for the distributed research infrastructures. And I agree with you, Nicholas. I think it is in the bones of the research infrastructures in general to actually come up with it. And it may be something that it's shared with the nodes, with the other infrastructures that make part of, make your own organization as a whole. But I don't think that the central management offices of distributed infrastructures will never get to market and own for the sake of actually delivering to society this kind of knowledge and new technology. I think it is certainly in your remit. So that That's great. Thank you for sharing your experience and your insight into this. Does anybody want to make any question to the speakers, or just generally just exchange some views? Everybody's shy. Will I pick? You want to say something more, Nicholas? Please, welcome.
Thank you. Actually, this is a question. This conference on the 18th of February sounds really exciting, and I just had a look at it. And maybe I want to be a little bit provocative here, because it sounds exciting. It looks really good, and you look at the list: CERN, EMBL. I'm tempted to say they've also already overcome the really hard bit. Everybody knows who they are. They're big. They're for sure. And so I would kind of turn the question around of what I was asked and say the advice from these bigger boys and those that have been working with them, or bigger girls for that matter. What can we learn from you to get to that recognition that companies will want to come and work with us?
Sorry for the clarification. The 18th of February, I told you, it's a workshop where both the RI, so the main model, you express the big name, but also industry will present their experience. But this webinar will be really to explain to people how to participate to the marketplace. So this is the main insight of the event. The marketplace will be in Granada, hopefully in person, for a real activity of first contact for technology transfer. What you learn by the webinar, apart the instruction, just also with the Q&A answer, will be also the model of technology transfer for the main player, large facility of Aeroforum, because it's organized by this umbrella of big intergovernmental institution, and also the experience from the industry, because there will be some industry that will speak about their proposal like technology transfer. So it will be both sides. So this is the main organization.
We are just mindful of time. We're about to close this very short window, and I would like to just also try and somewhat respond to Nicholas. I think he's again come into an important dimension of this discussion, which is this difference, which we have clearly noted when we have surveyed the landscape of research infrastructures and how they deal with the innovation aspects, and the enormous difference from the longer established large physical and engineering world RIs from the smaller distributed other domain kind of research infrastructures. So, but one good point is that Enrich is bridging, or at least it's talking to the full spectrum of research infrastructures, and we are trying to build instruments to actually exchange experiences. One of the mission for this project is to facilitate an exchange of experiences and getting to know the counterpart when we talk of industry liaison offices in governmental agencies and in research infrastructures. We've discovered these two worlds don't talk to each other. Possibly they don't even have a field where they can work together. And so we're trying to build a playing field where we can exchange experiences and we can learn from each other. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some tools. And so thank you everybody for being here today and for your contributions. There's going to be a new event next week that will discuss this kind of elements of knowledge transfer from the supplier side. This was more about the innovation or the user side. So this will be led by another partner in Danish Technology Institute of Enrich. And I would just leave the floor to Anne-Charlotte if she wants to make any final remarks.
No, I don't have final remarks. Thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, I just want to a very quick one on Anne, who's commenting on the chat that it's also to connect with industry, but this is the entire mission of Enrich, how to strengthen the collaboration between research infrastructure and industry. And thank you so much for your intervention and being there with us today. So we meet again next week and the next again. And if you have any topic that you think is relevant for the community and that you want to share, please get back to us. We would be really happy to help you hosting an episode. And this is for any kind of person or bodies representing the community. So thank you very much again for your participation. And we are really much looking forward to meeting you next week.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you
Bye
very
now.
much.
Bye.